Hi, welcome to X's and O's with LeRoy Butler, and we're here post-holiday. Did anybody get you any gifts?
Yeah, my kids actually did get me a few things.
Really?
Yeah, they got me
What
some
do you-
electronics, but I wanted like a LCD TV, and they got it for me for my
What?
man cave. Ultimately, I think I paid for it.
Yeah.
But they did get me something, so I was pretty excited about that.
Yeah.
I was. It was one of the best Christmases.
Good, good. Well, we're heading into the last week, and kind of an interesting situation here because Mike McCarthy is, posed with a dilemma here. He's got the final game, nothing for the Packers to gain from this game.
Right.
How does he play it? What would you do? Would you start Aaron Rodgers? Would you take him out at halftime, treat it like a preseason game? How would you handle it?
In my opinion, I think I would handle it like a third preseason game. Going into the game, I would say I would want Aaron Rodgers to play 3 quarters to stay sharp. And not to mention, I would like him to be very aggressive, though, right off hand. I'd like him to feel like he's in command. Matter of fact, I would let this be Aaron Rodgers' game. He can call it the way he wants to call it. He can do what he wants to do. Some of his favorite plays, I'll do a lot of no huddle to stay sharp with that. But and I think I'll let the players kind of dictate what they want to do as well. I mean, sometimes as coaches, when you're on the same wavelength as your players, that's the reason why you win games. I think sometimes coaches, they kind of dictate a lot to the players. They kind of don't know the mood of the locker room. But
Right.
McCarthy knows the mood of the locker room. And I would venture to guess that some of his top leaders, like, Woodson and some of these guys, they've already said, they want to play,
Now,
this long or
what
that
about,
long.
what if, the Lions are playing for the 5th seed and they don't want to go to New Orleans, which would
Right.
happen if
Right.
they were the 6th.
Yeah.
So they're going to be playing really hard to win. We already know what Ndamukong Suh can do and what his moods are, and we know how the Lions play the game. What do you do if it starts to be an aggressive game and Rodgers is getting hit?
Well, the last time they played, Sue was thrown out for, kicking even Didrik Smith. But I will say this, Ndamukong Suh at some point has to realize that he didn't make the Pro Bowl because of the bad publicity that he got in that particular case. And B.J. Rodgers, who didn't have a good year, made it. So he has some motivation inside for that. But, and they also know they have a better chance of winning that game if Aaron Rodgers is on the run. And I think the offensive line last week got the game ball. So this week is going to prove that how can you shut down. They got Averill, outside rusher. This guy makes you step up in the pocket because he's a speed rusher. And Brian Bulaga, who's not going to play, had problems with him. So when you step up, you're stepping up where we're right in the middle where Sue is. And he's going to be going against 2 guards that he can overpower. So you can see a guy just going out figuring, hey, I got to take over this game. And a lot of people are going to be watching this game, seeing that the last time they played the Packers, he got thrown out.
Okay. Well, my feeling is that McCarthy will play this like a preseason game, and I think if he sees,
Which
the game
preseason, the first
probably the 3rd one,
Right.
where he plays them into the second half
Right.
and then
Pull him.
pulls them. But if Rodgers is getting hit by Sue and Averill and all those Tulloch, he's got to pull them. He can't risk getting them hurt. Now, one thing that we'll probably see is a good portion of Matt Flynn. Why not see if he can win this game for you? Put him out there, see if he can win it. It's a big game for him, isn't it?
It really is. But I think his audition started last year when he almost beat New England. People have been putting him on the radar. But I would like to see him in a 2-minute situation. So I agree with you. The second quarter, put him in there and let him run some no huddle, 2-minute situation. Let me see him command the huddle. Because if you're going to invest, Kevin Cobb type money in a guy that is not proven, you need to see him in certain, situations. So with that being said, if you're, if you're playing, you're thinking, this is my opportunity. He's going to play. But I agree with you. Get him a lot of reps, because just in case something does happen, you're okay.
Exactly. You never know what will happen in the playoffs, and you want to think that you can at least have a guy who can manage the game and give you a chance.
Right.
So, another question here is, we know that McCarthy, if Chad Clifton gets through the practice week okay, he's practicing in pads, that he's going to play. Not sure if he's going to start. My gut feeling is he will start and play maybe a half or something like that. Right. They really want to get a look at him. They got a decision to make here. Do you go with Clifton, who will have played maybe a half in 11 games, or do you go with Marshall Newhouse? You know, I mean, what do you do?
I'm going with the veteran. I mean, because at this point, I would like to see Clifton in some live action before the playoffs. I don't want his first live action to be in the playoffs. It may get a little rusty. He may be one of the guys I let play the whole game, Tom, just to see where he's at, you know. And then, you know, you can throw Newhouse at right tackle at some point. And, you know, at some point, you got to say, this is my best 5 going into the playoffs. I need to know if Clifton is one of those 5.
Right.
Because maybe he's not. So, you know, if he's having trouble, I also leave him out there. And I wouldn't even give him any help. See, can he revive his career before he got injured?
I could see them going with Clifton at left tackle, Newhouse at right tackle, and moving Lang back to left guard and seeing if that.
That's the strongest line if Balaga's not
if Balaga's out. Right.
Otherwise, but again, I want to emphasize to people, and I think people know this, Bulaga had a lot of problems with Averill last year. You know, speed rushers give Bulaga a lot of problems. So I wouldn't even play him in this particular game. But if he does play, whatever. But and a lot of this will dictate to McCarthy. A lot of these guys are banged up. The guys who are banged up, they won't play very much anyway. But remember, you know, last year they had 16, 17 guys on injured reserve, and they found a way to win. But it's different this year, Tom, because the guys who are out now, they're starters. So it could be 5 or 6 starters that are really banged up. So you want to get those guys healthy.
Right. They'll be facing a quarterback who, you know, a year ago was basically nursing a bad shoulder, and everybody wondered whether this guy was for real. When the Packers played him, he was wearing a glove because he had a broken finger. He's wearing a splint in there. Now he's, you know, completely healthy, not wearing the glove, and he's playing some pretty good football. You know, this guy's going to really test their defense, isn't he?
Yeah, he put up some great numbers. A big, strong guy, Matthew Stafford. Watched him a lot at Georgia. Played with, you know, Green, the wide receiver up in Cincinnati. They put up great numbers together. If you put him with a wide receiver like Calvin Johnson, who I think can be like top 5 in MVP voting, it's a comfort level. Should have made the Pro Bowl. Now, in my estimate, Cam Newton, she got that 3rd spot, but they gave it to Eli Manning. But it could have easily been Matthew Stafford. The numbers that he put up, Tom, the touchdowns, the yards, and getting his team into the playoffs after being out of it since 1990, going 0-16 at one point, you're in the position to have a 5 or 6 seed. I think Matthew Stafford does not get the credit. So now this is a national stage for him. This is his tune-up for the playoffs, and I expect him to play well. Not to mention
he might be coming back here for first round of playoffs or the NFC Championship game.
So he wants to be sharp, but that offense is the same as the Green Bay Packers. The running game is non-existent. He's going to put the ball up. He got a big tight end in Pettigrew. He got Calvin Johnson at wide receiver. He got a lot of other fast guys around.
Well, you know, against the Packers defense, you know, pick your poison. I mean, you can run it or you can pass it. You know, you're going to get a lot of yards at the end of the day. And that also leads me to our last segment, and that is, can the Packers win a Super Bowl with this defense? I went back and looked at
that's my homework for you. What'd you find out?
What was the worst rank? Was there anybody who ranked second to last in the league? No. Nobody has ever won a Super Bowl.
In the 20s, 25,
there were
26.
teams in the 20s. One team was 27th of 28, but they lost in the Super Bowl. I think it was Buffalo in one of those years. No team has won a Super Bowl with a defense that bad,
and see,
ranked that bad.
But Tom, think about it. We're basically saying that, well, not we're saying, you're saying, that New England and the Packers will get in a shootout if they make it to the Super Bowl, because both defenses are not very good.
Right.
New England is very last. Packers are second to last.
Yeah.
But there's one thing that the Packers do have. They get turnovers. The game they didn't get turnovers, they lost Kansas City. Right. So it's all a body of work. They're bottom line coaches, and I think they're the best coaches in the league. They know they don't have the greatest athletic guys at safety, outside linebacker other than Matthews. But for some reason, getting turnovers, that's what it's all about. I think that's the reason why Matthews made the Pro Bowl the last 8 weeks. He's played better than, just as good as anybody outside linebacker. But this will be unprecedented if you can win a Super Bowl having a defense in the 30s. But scoring defense, now they're like top 15.
Yeah, they're in the middle of the pack.
Middle of the pack. Right. That's okay. But the yards that you're going to give up, that you gave up to Chicago, almost 200 yards rushing, and over 275 yards passing to a quarterback that was coaching high school.
Right.
You got to think that if they get in a shootout, if Aaron Rodgers is alive, they're hoping to win that game.
It'll be like that Arizona game. Last team who has the ball, or,
right.
Whoever can cause a turnover.
And that's what happened with the Giants. They got turnovers. Eli turned it over once. The Packers were able to use that to ultimately win the game if they get in a shootout. So if they get in a shootout with Dallas, the Giants, the Saints, with Drew Brees breaking that record, you're thinking, you're right. It's just like Arizona with Warner. The last team will win the game.
Okay. Well, that does it for 5 questions. We will be back after the game against the Lions, and we'll have a little bye-week 5 questions.
Yeah. We'll do something.
We'll analyze the playoff field, and we'll
maybe the whole entire NFL.
Have some X's and O's, too.
Yeah.
So be sure you do tune in for X's and O's.
Yeah, this is sponsored by SyndixMarket.com. Syndix Ballester owned and operated. And one of the best things about Syndix is you can find my new cookbook, which I have a new cookbook coming out in April, so don't miss that. And W.J. Kuhn in Oak Creek.
And we'll see you next week.